Okay, so hi guys. Today, first of all, I would like to apologize in advance. I'm kind of out of it today. This whole crisis is really getting to me, and I might be a little bit spacey and all over the place in the video today. So I'm really sorry. I'm sure that you understand and you're going through the whole thing as well. So I'm just sorry. So let's dive into it. Today's topic is education, which is, I think it's especially important for you guys as you're training to be teachers. So I assume that this is one of the topics that might be one of the most interesting to you. Um, I'm sorry, I told you really out of it. I'm going to be looking at my notes a little bit more today than I usually do. I'm really sorry. So, anyway, as the chapter mentions, public schools were established in 1825 in America, and it was seen as a tool for equality of opportunity, for giving an opportunity for everybody to learn and to get higher in life. What made them even more in the service of equality of opportunity and the American mentality that schools taught vocational skills, so professions, and civic duties, how to be a good patriot and stuff. And they were paid by taxpayer money. Now, this is really just the introduction of the chapter. Then it goes into the educational ladder. Uh, Whenever I try to explain the Hungarian system of education to my friends, that I mean, you can go to high school for 6 years, or 5 years, or 4 years, and it's always like, okay, I went to high school for 5 years, but not because I was held back, but because it was a 5-year-old program. So you would think that the Hungarian system is difficult, but really the American system is difficult too, because basically each state has their own stuff, how they do it. But basically, as far as the educational ladder goes, so you have preschool, right, our Ovoda, uh, preschool for ages 3 or 4, then you have kindergarten, which is like where the kid is being prepared for school. This is for about when they are 5. You have elementary school, and this is the first real difference between the Hungarian system and the American system. That for us, the elementary school is 8 years, but for them, they have like this breaking point when you are 12 or 13, when you finish elementary school with grade 5 or 6, and then you go to middle school, which is their year 7 or 8, 7 and 8, or year 6, 7 and 8. And when you are done with that, you go to high school, which is then 4 years. After high school, you go to college. Now, there is a difference between when we translate college and university. Our college and university is different what is college and university for Americans. What I mean is that in Hungarian, when we say college, we mean főiskola. And when we say university, we mean egyetem. Now, for us, they are not the same. So, like, főiskola, college, is something of less prestige than a university. It's theoretically easier to get into a college than to university. But for Americans, even if they go to Harvard or Yale, they mean their first year when they got there, they say that they go to college. Basically, their bachelor studies, their undergraduate studies, they are in college. And after they're done with this 4-year course, then they get their bachelor degree, and then they go to university. They get their MA degrees, they get their professional degree. For example, like if you want to be a medical doctor or want to be a lawyer, you have to do pre-law or pre-med medical in college, and when you have finished that, then you can apply for law school or medical school, which is then another 4 years. I don't know how much is it for law. I know it's 4 years for medical study. And yeah, one thing, because this is like a pet peeve of mine, because I always see this being done wrong. I mean, guys, I do translations. I translate novels sometimes. So when I read translated novels, I always, and I mean always, notice the mistakes. And translators in Hungary doesn't seem to grasp how Americans call the different grades in high school and in college, because they have their own names. The first year of high school and college is called freshman year. Then you have sophomore, junior, and senior. So basically, when you say that I'm a junior, it means that you are in grade 11 in high school, or that you are in your third year of college studies, university studies. And I always see it completely butchered. Okay, the lighting is so bad, I'm so sorry. So it's always butchered in Hungarian translations of different novels, but now you know. Freshman is year 1, sophomore is year 2, junior is year 3, and senior is year 4, basically. Let's talk a little bit about higher education. So college and university education. I think I'm just going to lower the blinds a little bit. Maybe then we get better lighting. Okay, it's a little bit better, right? It's a little bit better. So yeah, anyway. Yay, I'm just adjusting the camera. So sorry for the technical pause. So getting in higher education in the US has its own problems. First of all, getting into college. It's a really competitive process, and it's not like for us that there is this concrete point-based system based on how well you do on your maturas, how well you have done in high school, grades wise, where you can get extra points for extracurricular stuff. In the US, basically what happens when you try to get admitted to school, and I forgot the right word. Anyway, so when you try to get into university, they usually ask you to write an essay, do a video essay. They look into your extracurricular activities, what you have done in high school. Sports is super important because sports show how competitive you are, how much of a team player you are. But like college sports is an abomination. Sorry. Disclaimer, I hate sports, like spectator sports, professional sports. I love doing sports, but I hate the whole sports industry. But what happens in the US in colleges and universities is appalling. Like, you can get a sport scholarship, that you can basically get a free ride to college if you are really good at sports. Sorry, I've already recorded my the video for my other group, and I spoke for almost an hour, and I was starting to lose my voice by the end of it, and I still haven't recovered. So yeah, you can get scholarships for being a good sportsman, being good at sports. You can get a free ride into college, but you are expected to play for your college team. And there is a huge amount of money in college sports. It's a huge industry, but you as a player actually see nothing of it. Your coach, the coach of the university team, is usually actually more well paid than the president of the university. A university coach, basketball coach, football coach, can earn up to like $2 or $3 million a year, and it's just college. And when you are a college athlete, you are basically supposed to treat sports as a full-time job, do training and stuff, but also keep up your grades, because if your grades slip, you can be thrown out of the team. If you get an injury, you might be out of the team, and then you lose your scholarship. And also sometimes people who are not academically there for that university standards, they might be admitted to that university based on their sports achievements. So the US and university sports, college sports is a mess. But I'm going to stop right here, because that's maybe something that we should talk about in the chapter about sports and leisure time. So point is, sports is one way to get into university. And there is like student government positions where you can see that you have leadership skills and stuff like that. So doing extracurricular work is a huge deal, and it really helps you to get into university. The other problem of US colleges is that they have huge tuition fees, and they are rising steeply in the last couple of decades. Meanwhile, the money that people salaries, sorry, I told you I'm out of it today. So tuition fees are rising steeply. Meanwhile, salaries are not rising as much, which means that it's actually way more expensive to go to college nowadays than it used to be in the 60s or the 70s. And now many people finish college with thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And that is terrible and really scary. So basically, we still have this idea that if you want to have a good paying job, then you need to finish college, and you need to get a college degree, a university degree, to get a high paying job. But there are actually less and less of these high paying jobs, and university at the same time is getting more and more expensive. So it's a scam, kind of getting to be a scam. Of course, you can get scholarships and aids, it help a lot, but you are still going to end up with paying a huge amount of tuition fee. There is actually a very good table of it in the chapter, so check that out. And there is also this thing that it's so much easier to get into college if you are a legacy kid, meaning that your parents or your grandparents went to that school as well. Especially if they are like big name alumni and they donate money to the university. So even if okay, so this is for the rich guys. So even if you are not right there academically, your parents and your name can get you into that school. as university and college is getting more expensive, community college is becoming a more viable option. Community college, this is basically a 2-year-old problem. Usually it's much cheaper. Usually it's training for different professions. They are like basically OKA trainings in Hungary. But you can actually get credits that can be transferred to college. So what you can do is finish a 2-year long course in community college, then transfer those credits to a state college, a state university, and actually get a 4-year degree at a kind of cheaper rate. And even though the rise of tuition is rising, actually more and more people are going to university. This is also something that sorry, my nose is itchy. This is something that the chapter also mentioned, that hundreds of years ago only about 10% of people went to college. Now it's more than half of people going to college, so it's actually becoming more popular in a way. Yeah, I've talked about how getting a degree means it's like a monetary investment, because you expect to get better paying jobs if you get a degree. And still today, like, they want you to have a master degree and to have 2 years of experience, and they're willing to pay you barely more than minimum wage. So that's for getting degrees. And also today more and more jobs are requiring higher education. For example, in manufacturing you need to know robotics. So that is also a reason why more and more people are getting into universities and colleges and getting higher education. But turning a little bit, okay, I just need to fondle something. I just need to have something in my hand, play while I talk to you guys. Sorry, it's not my day. Yeah, I made this. Anyway, so let's turn a little bit away from universities, and let's talk about the different types of elementary schools and high schools. Basically, we can talk about three types of schools. You have public schools, private schools, and charter schools. Public. Let's start with public schools. Public schools are founded by the government and run by the government. They get money from property taxes, so the taxes that you pay after your home, which means that schools in richer neighborhoods get more money. Meanwhile, schools in poorer neighborhoods get less money. And then who lives in poorer neighborhoods, in inner city slums, so to say? Minority people. So there is this thing that you're very likely to start with a disadvantage if you are a minority person, or if you are a black person especially. Also, public schools are based on districts. So it's not like, because in Hungary, when you are getting into high school, it's your decision basically what high school you want to try to get into. For example, I went to a completely different city for high school because that was a better high school. You can't really do that in the US, because you're going to go to the high school that is in your school district, which is the closest to your home. And once again, and my nose is still itchy. So basically, even in high school, you are bound by your neighborhood and your district. And so that's public schools. Private schools are most often affiliated with different churches, different religions, and they are so these churches and groups found these kind of schools. Uh, about 10% of all students go to private schools, even when they are not elite private schools. Parents are still have to pay um, some tuition, but not as much as in the case of elite private schools. The thing with elite private schools that they are actually hurting the idea of equality of opportunity, because they are prohibitive because of their high tuition fees, and basically rich people send their kids into these private schools because it's an amazing place to network. So when you start your life, start your job, you already have connections because you met the Kennedys, the Rockefellers, you go to the same parties, you went to the same school. Okay, I'm just throwing names around, but you see the point. You go to school with other rich kids, you know the same people, and so when you are working, you get into the job realm, work world. Okay, I'm really talking nonsense now. You're already going to have someone to turn to and like help each other, and it's hurting the idea of equality of opportunity. I don't know what this is. Yeah. And there are charter schools. Charter schools is basically right in between private and public schools. Charter schools are founded by the government, so the government gives money for the charter schools, but they are run by corporations or parents or anybody basically who are giving in a tender and wins that tender. Charter schools can be really good because they are not as bound by public school curriculum and syllabi, and they can be bad, as you could see in the John Oliver piece, because sometimes they are just big scams when people try to pocket the money that is given to the school, and sometimes charter schools like close in the middle of the semester and stuff like that. A couple of words about standardized. Okay, my notes are just jumpy today. Standardized testing. I don't want to talk a lot about it because you watched, and I really hope that you did watch the John Oliver segment on it. Standardized testing basically sucks. It started out as a kind of good idea. It ended up really badly because now it's school is all about the standardized test. Kids are taught not to know stuff but to be ready to the test. They are done very often very wrongly. They don't make sense. You are supposed to make so many points that are physically impossible to get. Teachers really just teach to the test because their salaries depend on how well their kids do. So it's just really messed up, and it's a huge stress on the kids. So yeah, it sucks. School segregation, just a couple of words about school segregation. So up until the mid 50s, there were white schools and black schools. They were said that black schools are just as good as white schools, but they are just separated, which is of course stupid because, as we saw, black schools were usually in worse neighborhoods, poorer neighborhoods. They got less money, they had worse equipment, worse teachers. So if you were a black kid, you started with a disadvantage. In 54, there was the Brown versus the Board of Education Supreme Court ruling, which said that segregation cannot be done anymore. After that, there was this aggressive campaign to diversify schools. Sometimes Black kids were even transferred by buses to school districts that were farther away from their home, so they could attend white schools, and white kids were the same thing was done with white kids as well. People hated that, and so there was this new law that you cannot do this. You cannot physically transfer kids to a school district that is further away just to diversify the student body. Um, there have been other programs and attempts to help minority kids to catch up to more affluent areas, and the achievement gap has actually been halved ever since. So we are on the right track, but still not there. Okay, one of these programs is the so-called affirmative action, when especially colleges, universities are encouraged to admit as many minority students as they can, but there is a backside. Sorry. So there is a bad side to that. That, for example, there could be white students who has better academic achievements, but they are not admitted because of affirmative action, because their places are taken up by minority kids who did worse, but the school is incentivized to admit them to fill the quota, basically, the minority quota. So affirmative action in this way is kind of controversial. And finally, before we move on to one of my favorite topics, before we move on to that, just a couple of words about immigrant children. This is also something that the text mentioned, how there are more and more immigrant children nowadays in the US. The percentage of foreign-born children actually doubled between 1980 and 2010. And one of the problems is that there are more and more kids who were not born in America, and they have the language barrier to climb, basically, and it can take them years to learn English on a level that puts them on the same standing with American kids, with white kids who speak English as their native language. And that actually widens the achievement gap once again, which sucks, really. And finally, one of my favorite topics. I told you guys when we started this course that I have these pet topics I really love to talk about. If we were in the classroom right now and I wasn't like under the minor frog's arse right now, this would be something that you would find me speaking about for 20-25 minutes, but I will try to cut it short. I'm really going to cut it short because I've been already talking for half an hour now. And this topic is sexual education. This is something that I think the chapter doesn't mention at all, but you had to watch the sexual education segment on John Oliver. So basically what happens in the US that there is no federal regulation for sexual education in school. It's decided by every state what they do, but they get federal money for it. And they get federal money for abstinence-only education too. There are actually federal programs to further abstinence-only education. And in many states, abstinence-only sexual education is the only available kind of sexual education in schools. And in even more states, this is the most popular one. And I think there is only 2 states in the whole United States when sexual education cannot contain faulty information, untrue information. I'm not even joking. Only in 2 states educators are compelled to actually talk to you about sex beyond abstinence only education, which is only don't have sex. That's really all about abstinence only education. Keep yourself a virgin until marriage. That is all that abstinence only education does. And it's so super harmful. It doesn't even work, and it just hurts people. There is actually a really good book on it if you're interested. I'm going to summarize some of the arguments of that book, and this book is Jessica Valenti's The Purity Myth. So basically the problem with abstinence only education that it doesn't convey any information about sex, and even when it does it the wrong way. Like, the main argument is once again that you shouldn't have sex until marriage, which is fine if that is what you want to do. If you want to remain a virgin until marriage, that's totally cool. But no one should be brainwashed into this idea by school. If it's a personal decision, that's completely fine as long as you have adequate information that you need. But what they do is that under the guise of sexual education, these people actually shame kids into not having sex and give them false information. For example, by false information, I mean condoms. You don't even have to use condoms because condoms doesn't work anyway. So why use condoms? If you have an abortion, you are going to get breast cancer. Okay, I'm going to talk about abortion in a little bit because that's also a topic that is kind of close to my heart. Also, abstinence only education often uses metaphors that are very humiliating to women, because of course these educational presentations mostly focus on women, because it doesn't really matter for guys if they're virgin or not as much as for girls, because if you're a girl you are only worth something that when if you are virgin. This is very wrong. I mean, this curriculum very often tie a women's worth to their sexual status. They use metaphors like, if you are a woman who has had sex before marriage, you are like a dirty shoe or a chewed on gum or a used piece of tape. You lose your value if you have sex. Now, just imagine if there is a girl who has been raped, and there is a rape culture in the United States right now, an actual rape culture. You are a girl, you have been raped, you have been through a traumatic experience, and then they tell you that because you are not a virgin, you are a piece of trash. Now imagine, what does it do to your self-esteem? Abstinence only education in this way is very, very harmful. And it doesn't even stop at schools. There are abstinence conventions which are made to look like super cool. Being a virgin is super, you can re-virginize yourself spiritually. It's all about, of course, it's all about God and Christianity too, and it is actually an industry. It's about getting money. There is this whole promise ring tradition. There are companies selling these promise rings, and then you wear them, and by wearing these rings you signify that you promised God and your community to remain a virgin until you get married, which is only kindly kind of disturbing, because once again, if this is your decision to do this, it's okay. But it's not okay to be brainwashed and forced into this decision without having given adequate information. Because, and this is that's a fact, abstinence only education doesn't work. It doesn't lower the number of teenagers having sex, it only lowers the number of teenagers having safe sex. Because they are teenagers. They are going to discover their sexuality, but if you don't give them tools how to be safe and how to experience uh, pleasurable sex and healthy sex, they are not going to have it. If you tell them that condoms doesn't work, they are not going to use condoms, which is going to lead to STDs, and it's going to lead to unwanted pregnancies. By the way, right now, uh, the number of teen pregnancies is dropping in the United States, but it's not because of abstinence only education, it's because of comprehensive sexual education, because kids are actually being taught, not necessarily in school but on the internet. There is a more freer flow of information on how to practice safe sex, and this is what's helping, not abstinence only education. Once again, bullying a kid into being abstinent doesn't work. You're just going to psychologically scar them. So yeah, I talked about this purity because this purity ring stuff is connected to this purity myth, this virginity myth. Especially the US has this idea of the sexy virgin, and by sexy virgin I mean stuff like young Britney Spears. It's always a white girl, never a minority girl. It's always a white girl. She's skinny, she's pretty, she is sexy, but not sexual. Once we have proof that she is being sexual, that she is sexually active, she uses her value. Just think about what happened once Britney Spears got pregnant. Before that, she was like this a sweetheart of America. She was so cute, she was sexy, she was a sex symbol. And the moment she had kids, she put on a couple of pounds and she wasn't that desirable anymore. Okay, I'm just hearing strange voices from outside the room. So once she wasn't that desirable, the media started this hate campaign against her. And remember how it culminated, how she shaved her own hair, how it really hurt her. So yeah, I was at purity rings and the virginity myth, the sexy virgin stereotype. And what is even more disturbing than these purity rings are the purity balls. There are actually companies in the States that are organizing this kind of purity balls. And the point here is that you have little girls, like 11 and 12-year-old little girls and their fathers. And there is this ceremony during the purity ball when these couples of fathers and daughters go in front of a huge cross, and the father, and this is where it's going to get creepy, the father promises to keep his daughter's virginity intact. He promises to guard her virginity. It's not her decision, it's not up to her. It's not that sex is a good thing. Sex is a good thing. I think it's something that we can agree on. It's not that, okay, you are going to be sexual one day and it's okay, it's not shameful. No, it's your father's responsibility to guard your virginity until you get married, and this is given to your husband. Your sexuality is controlled by the man in your life. which is not a little sexist. And yeah, I'm just looking at the last line in my notes, which is, a woman's worth is not measured in whether she has had sex or not. Damn it. This is how passionate about I am this topic. And I promise that I'm going to talk a little bit about abortion. I'm not going to make a secret out of it that I'm pro-choice. I'm very strictly pro-choice. I always say, and I keep myself to this phrase, this saying, that there are two things a woman would do anything. It's to have a child and to not to have a child. And for me, it means that if you outlaw abortions, you are not going to stop abortions happening. You are going to stop safe abortions happening, because people are going to find a way to not to have babies, and it's not going to be safe, and it's not going to be safe. You are going to cause women to die. And it's not a simple question of whether somebody should be born, because the problem with pro-lifers that they are not really pro-life, they are pro-birth. They want kids to be born, and after they are born, they don't care about them. And when you bring a new life into the world, there is more to consider. And I believe that you have to wait, you have to think, and you have to wait which option brings on more suffering. I know it sounds a little cruel, but I also say that the mother knows best. And if the mother is on the opinion that the best thing for her baby is not to be born, then she has a reason behind it. And the reason might be that she's not emotionally stable enough. She cannot provide that emotional background, emotional safety net. She is not ready to have a child. That is a valid reason not to have a child. Because it's not just giving birth, it's raising the kid. And you can argue that there is adoption, but adoption is not that easy. And so many kids end up in the system and in the foster system, and they suffer there. They don't get the emotional background, they don't get the care that they need. So I believe that sometimes it's the best for everybody involved for a baby not to be born. And this decision should be left to the mothers. So that's why I am strictly pro-choice. And now I was completely frank, and you might not agree with me, and that's fine. And now it's going to stay in the video because it would be so damn hard to cut it out. But anyway, yeah, that's my opinion. That's why I'm completely against abstinence only education, and I am completely pro-choice. Once again, the mothers know best. To be pro-choice, you don't have to say that you would have an abortion. I don't know if I would have an abortion if I was in that situation, but I know that I want to give everybody the opportunity to know what's the best for them. And I think it should be the basics. Okay, so anyway, that's what I wanted to say. If you're more interested in the situation of abortion in the US right now, and like pregnancy crisis centers, which is a very disturbing thing that is happening in the States right now, there are also very good John Oliver videos on that. I know by this time you might be completely fed up with John Oliver, but the investigative work that he and his team does is really good. So I can completely recommend what he does. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I wanted to say, and I hope you're going to have a lot of things to say about education and the state of education in the United States. And I will be there at the time of the class waiting for your comments. And so thank you very much, and see you guys. Take care.